finding the courage to begin again at 65. After her husband's passing, Helen Rivers, at 65, found herself living alone in a cozy but aging house in the coastal town of Carmel-by-the-Sea, California. The quaint little home, filled with memories and the scent of old books and lavender, had once been a vibrant family retreat. Helen often spent her days preparing for the visits of her son, Kevin, his wife, Melissa, and their teenage son, Cameron. These visits were Helen's lifeline, moments she eagerly anticipated. She would spend days polishing the silverware, baking Cameron's favorite cookies, and making sure the guest rooms were perfect. Every photograph on the wall, every flower in the vase, was arranged with love and a hopeful heart. Yet over time, she began to sense a change, a certain distance growing between her and the younger generation. One crisp Saturday morning, as sunlight filtered through the lace curtains, Kevin and his family arrived for what Helen thought would be another joyful visit. But the atmosphere was different. Kevin seemed tense, Melissa avoided eye contact, and Cameron, now taller and more self-conscious, hung back, fiddling with his phone. As they sat around the kitchen table sipping coffee, Kevin finally cleared his throat and said, "Mom, we need to talk." Helen's heart skipped a beat. Kevin continued, choosing his words carefully. "Mom, maybe it's better if you don't come over to our house for a while. Cameron's got a lot going on with school, and, well, Melissa and I feel like things are just a little overwhelming." Helen sat frozen, clutching her coffee mug. The words stung, but what hurt more was the way Kevin avoided her gaze, as if he were ashamed. Melissa chimed in, her voice soft but firm. "It's just, sometimes when you come over, it's hard to keep up with everything. You know how busy things are." Cameron, shifting uncomfortably in his seat, muttered under his breath, "And the house smells weird. Like old stuff." The final blow. Helen managed a weak smile and nodded, masking the ache in her chest. She saw it now. She had become a burden, not a joy. No matter how lovingly she prepared for them, she was no longer welcome. After they left, Helen sat alone by the window, the teacups still warm, the cookies untouched. Tears welled up, not just from the words spoken, but from the realization that her life had shrunk down to these fleeting visits she could no longer depend upon. The days that followed were heavy and silent. Helen realized, with painful clarity, how much she had tethered her happiness to her family's attention. She had built her world around their visits, their needs, their approval. And now, without them, her world felt empty. One afternoon, feeling particularly restless, Helen decided to take a walk through town. The sea breeze carried the scent of salt and blooming jasmine. As she wandered past the community center, a familiar voice called out, "Mrs. Rivers, is that you?" Helen turned to see Carrie Morrison, a former student from her years as an elementary school teacher. Carrie, now in her 30s, pushed a stroller with a bright-eyed toddler named Maya. They chatted warmly, memories flooding back. Carrie mentioned she needed someone trustworthy to watch Maya a few afternoons a week while she worked from home. Without hesitation, Helen agreed. She hadn't realized how deeply she missed the feeling of being needed, not out of obligation, but out of trust and affection. The first time Maya toddled into her living room, clutching a teddy bear, Helen felt a spark reignite within her. Maya's laughter filled the house in a way that no careful arrangement of flowers or baked cookies ever could. Caring for Maya wasn't about proving her worth. It was about simple, joyful connection. Emboldened by this new sense of purpose, Helen sought out more ways to fill her days with meaning. She signed up for a ceramics class at the senior center, a decision that felt both terrifying and exhilarating. On the first day, she met Margaret Yamada, a spirited 70-year-old with a quick laugh and a talent for sculpting whimsical animals out of clay. They became fast friends, often staying after class to chat about everything from art to travel dreams. Slowly, Helen's life blossomed anew. She attended art exhibits, joined a walking club, and even took short weekend trips with her new friends. She no longer spent her days waiting by the phone, hoping for a call that might never come. She was building a life, and it was beautiful in ways she hadn't imagined possible. Meanwhile, Kevin began to notice the change. Used to his mother always being available, he was surprised one evening when he called and got no answer. A few days later, when he did reach her, Helen's voice was bright and animated. "Sorry, honey," she said cheerfully. "I was out to dinner with some friends after our ceramics class. We're preparing for a little exhibition next month." Kevin sat on the couch, stunned. He wasn't sure what surprised him more, that his mother was too busy to talk, or that she sounded happy. Later that week, he visited her Facebook page and found photos of Helen laughing with a group of friends, holding up a lopsided but charming clay bowl she had made. And there was a picture of little Maya, grinning on Helen's lap. For the first time, Kevin felt a pang of regret. Had he been so focused on his own life that he failed to see his mother's loneliness? Had he, in trying to manage his own stress, pushed away the woman who had given him everything? Determined to make amends, Kevin proposed that the whole family attend Helen's upcoming ceramics exhibition. Melissa agreed, and even Cameron, though initially reluctant, didn't protest. The day of the exhibition, Helen beamed with pride as she stood next to her modest display, a collection of earthy, vibrant pottery pieces that reflected her newfound spirit. When Kevin, Melissa, and Cameron entered the hall, Helen's heart fluttered with a mixture of nerves and joy. Cameron, after a moment of hesitation, handed Helen a small, slightly crooked clay figurine. "I made this for you," he mumbled. "I'm sorry for being a jerk." Helen's eyes brimmed with tears as she hugged her grandson tightly. Melissa stepped forward, her voice thick with emotion. "Helen, we're sorry. We were so caught up in our own world, we didn't realize how much we hurt you." Helen smiled warmly but firmly. "I forgive you. But from now on, we'll do things a little differently. My life has its own rhythm now. I'll be there when I can, but I won't be putting my life on hold anymore." Kevin nodded, understanding at last. They weren't just visiting a mother waiting for their attention. They were visiting a woman with a full, vibrant life of her own. From that day forward, their relationship shifted. No longer built on obligation or guilt, it grew from mutual respect and genuine affection. They made plans together, not out of duty, but because they truly wanted to share in each other's lives. Helen continued to watch Maya a few afternoons a week, attended more art classes, and even started giving pottery workshops to kids at the community center. And on Sundays, sometimes Kevin and his family would visit, not to fill a silent obligation, but to share stories, laughter, and love in a home that had once again become a place of living, not just longing. The story of Helen Rivers was a quiet but powerful reminder. Older adults deserve to live for themselves, to find joy, passion, and connection beyond their roles as parents and grandparents. The thoughtless busyness of younger generations can unknowingly wound the hearts of those who raised them. And most importantly, letting go of old expectations, of waiting for others to define your happiness, is not defeat. It's liberation. It's where true, lasting happiness is born. Helen had thought her life's best chapters were behind her. Instead, she found that the most fulfilling chapters were just beginning, written with her own hands, in her own time, at her own beautiful pace. Helen's days began to fall into a gentle, satisfying rhythm. On Mondays and Thursdays, she babysat Maya, delighting in the child's endless curiosity and cheerful chatter. Tuesday and Friday mornings were reserved for pottery classes, and afternoons often turned into impromptu coffee dates with Margaret and the friends they made at the senior center, like Evelyn Clark, a retired nurse with a wicked sense of humor, and Dolores Freeman, who used a cane but still insisted on leading every nature walk. On weekends, Helen found herself exploring parts of Carmel she had neglected for years, little bookstores tucked into alleys, hiking trails winding along the cliffs, farmers markets where local artisans sold jam, honey, and hand-woven scarves. She began writing again, too, something she hadn't done since Kevin was a boy. In a notebook she bought at second-hand shop, Helen started jotting down poems, thoughts, dreams for the future. For the first time in a long time, she was living forward instead of looking back. One bright Saturday in early spring, Helen and Margaret decided to take a weekend pottery workshop up in Mendocino. They carpooled along the Pacific Coast Highway, laughing like teenagers as they belted out old rock songs on the radio. The ocean stretched out endlessly to their left, glimmering under the sun. During the workshop, they learned a Japanese pottery technique called kintsugi, the art of repairing broken ceramics with gold, making the fractures a beautiful part of the object's history rather than something to hide. As Helen dusted powdered gold into the fine cracks of a mended vase, tears prickled at the corners of her eyes. "This is what life is, isn't it?" she whispered to Margaret. "We spend so much time mourning what's broken, but maybe the breaks are what make us beautiful." Margaret squeezed her hand and smiled. Amen to that. Meanwhile, Kevin's own journey had quietly begun. After attending Helen's pottery exhibition, something in him had shifted. He started noticing the small ways he and Melissa had grown self-centered, insulating themselves from others under the excuse of being busy. It wasn't just with his mother. They had pulled back from friends, neighbors, even each other. Life had become a treadmill of obligations, school pickups, work deadlines, mortgage payments. The joy had quietly bled out, replaced by constant low-grade stress. Seeing Helen thriving after such a hurtful experience made Kevin realize something profound. Maybe their family had been living life upside down. He and Melissa began to talk, really talk, in a way they hadn't in years. They made a pact to carve out real time for what mattered: family, friendships, community, creativity, instead of letting life slip by in a blur. Kevin even signed up for a beginner's woodworking class at the community center, inspired by Helen's courage to try new things. He wasn't good at it, not yet, but he loved the way working with his hands slowed his mind, made him present. Melissa, for her part, started a garden in their backyard, something she had always dreamed of but never had time to do. Cameron, seeing his parents lighten up, gradually opened up too, joining a robotics club at school and even volunteering with Helen at a kids' pottery day. The next time Kevin and his family visited Helen, it was different. They didn't arrive out of obligation, checking watches and answering emails on the side. They came bearing homemade blueberry muffins and a potted orchid for her new art studio, the spare bedroom, now brightly lit and full of ceramic creations. Helen welcomed them warmly, but without the old nervous energy, the frantic people-pleasing. They spent the afternoon molding little clay figures together, laughing as Kevin's pot collapsed inward and Cameron's dog sculpture somehow ended up looking like a giraffe. Later, as they sipped iced tea on the back porch, Helen shared stories from her recent adventures, the kintsugi workshop, hiking in Big Sur, her idea to start a small pottery club for kids and seniors. Melissa marveled. "I'm so glad you're doing all this, Helen. You're inspiring." Helen smiled, setting her glass down with quiet pride. "I realized," she said softly, "that we're never too old to start a new life, and we don't need permission from anyone to live it." The summer unfolded beautifully. Helen's pottery club at the community center became a runaway success, pairing older adults with children to create collaborative art projects. The room buzzed with energy and laughter, kids learning patience and creativity, seniors rediscovering joy and wonder through young eyes. One afternoon, as Helen helped Maya press her tiny handprint into a slab of soft clay, she realized she hadn't felt this full, this alive, in decades. The family she had yearned for had expanded beyond blood ties. It now included her friends, her students, the children at the center, even the ocean and sky she walked beneath every morning. Kevin noticed the change in himself, too. Their family gatherings became less formal, more frequent, and infinitely more joyful. They celebrated birthdays, art shows, random Tuesday dinners, just because. They had, without realizing it, built a new family dynamic, one based on mutual respect, shared experiences, and true affection rather than obligation or guilt. In early fall, Helen received an invitation to display her work at a local arts festival. It wasn't a major show, just a small booth among dozens, but it felt monumental. She spent days selecting her best pieces, carefully wrapping them in old quilts, and labeling each one with little handwritten tags. At the festival, Helen's booth quickly became one of the liveliest corners. Kids loved her whimsical animal figurines. Adults marveled at her delicate vases with golden seams of kintsugi. Toward the afternoon, as the sun dipped lower and the sky flushed pink, Helen spotted Kevin, Melissa, and Cameron weaving through the crowd, waving excitedly. They had brought friends, neighbors, even Cameron's girlfriend. They proudly introduced Helen to everyone, bragging about her artistry as if she were a celebrity. As Helen laughed and hugged them all, she felt an overwhelming surge of gratitude, not just for her family, but for herself, for having the courage to rebuild a life of joy, connection, and purpose. That night, after the festival had packed up and the town had quieted down, Helen stood on her porch gazing at the stars. The Pacific murmured softly in the distance, the same sea she had once stared at in loneliness, now whispering of infinite possibility. She thought back to the woman she had been, sitting by the window, waiting for phone calls, trying to shrink herself into whatever her family needed. She mourned that woman tenderly, but she no longer grieved her. That woman had been broken once, but now she was repaired, her cracks filled not with regret, but with gold. Main themes and final reflections. Helen's story illuminated a truth too often forgotten, that every human being, no matter their age, deserves to live fully, for themselves, not merely in service to others. It reminded younger generations that their well-meaning neglect could cause real hurt, and that relationships thrive not through duty, but through love freely given. And it proved that letting go of old expectations isn't defeat, it's liberation. Helen's greatest victory wasn't winning back her family's attention. It was finding herself, her joy, her purpose, her boundless capacity for new beginnings. If Helen's journey touched your heart and reminded you that it's never too late to start over, please consider giving this video a like to help more people find hope and inspiration. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Leave a comment below and share your own stories of courage, healing, or new beginnings. Your voice could be the encouragement someone else needs today. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more heartfelt stories about resilience, family, and living life to the fullest at every age. And if you know someone who might need a little reminder that new chapters are always possible, please share this video with them. Together, let's spread hope and kindness, one story at a time.